So, as descendants of enslaved Africans, we have in our energetic makeup trauma. But the idea is to, I say, is to shapeshift the narrative. So that is what is happening in ancestral lineage healing. It was an amazing experience. It's very somatic. It was a lot of grief, release.
Thank you so much for watching Seeds of Awakening. I'm your host, Amani Channel. I have a wonderful conversation planned for you today. I'll introduce the guest in just a second, but make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you like this kind of content. Let's bring the guest in now. She is Dr. Velma Love. She's an ancestral healer, and she's going to explain exactly what that is, her background, and welcome to the show, Velma, Dr. Velma Love. Make sure I say that as well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amani. It's good to be here to have this opportunity to chat with you. Ancestral lineage healing is an intentional practice to make contact with the energy of one's ancestral line. So one's ancestral line, that can be your mother's people, your mother's father's people, your father's mother's people, or your father's people. So primarily we work with four ancestral lines. And the idea is to help the client to relax, to drop into a meditative state, and to participate in a guided visualization where you actually imagine that you are meeting with and inviting the presence of an ancestor to come and speak with you. So you want to, I like to say, alchemize or transmute or transform some of the energies that have been passed on from generation to generation that don't serve us well. So, as descendants of enslaved Africans, we have in our energetic makeup trauma. So, the term post traumatic slave syndrome that Dr. Joy Gruy popularized a few years ago is one of the resources that we use. But the idea is to, I say, is to shapeshift the narrative so that we.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's back it up a little bit. How did you get to this point? What's your background? How are you raised? Where are you from? And how did you end up working in this field? It's really fascinating.
Well, I grew up in the rural South in South Carolina, and I was like during the civil rights era. The Freedom Riders were my heroes. So as a child, my ambition was to grow up, go to college, go to jail for being a freedom fighter.
That was your goal.
That was my goal. I wanted to go to college and go to jail for being a freedom fighter. So I was always sort of like keenly aware of social dynamics and just angry with injustice from a child. I can recall the days of separate water fountains when I was a young child in South Carolina, and divided medical spaces, the colored side and the white side. And I would always ask questions about this that my parents couldn't answer. And they really didn't understand why it was so concerning to me. But now I realize that after all of the study that I've done with African philosophy and traditional religions, that I was actually born into the world to do that work.
Very
That's
much
why I
sounds
came.
like it. Yep,
That's why
sounds
I came.
like it.
And so, so there's a long story of how I got from my childhood to where I am now. But, some of the highlights I will share. Um, I grew up in a family of storytellers. So my grandfather would always tell us stories about his life, and I love to hear his stories. He'd tell us Bible stories. He'd tell us Brer Rabbit tales, like all of this. This was just a rich part of growing up. My mother would always read a bedtime story. And so as I became older being still a child, but I would I'm the second of 10 children. So I would get my younger siblings all around and I would create stories and I would tell them stories. And I was the teacher. My role was the teacher. And whenever there was a play of make believe, I was the teacher. And I would tell stories. And I believed in the magic of stories. And so, that kind of stayed with me. I studied sociology as an undergraduate. Then I worked in community arts and nonprofit management. And then at some point, I felt this unction that there was a spiritual component that held the answers to improving the lives of Black people. So it was in pursuit of that spiritual component that I began to study metaphysics. I eventually went to seminary, Union Theological Seminary in New York City, which is known for its social justice work.
Hmm.
So it was just like it was home for me. And while at Union, I was introduced to the Orisha tradition.
You're like Yoruba, is that
Yes,
the African? Yep.
yeah. hmm
African spirituality.
African spirituality. I went back to South Carolina, went to Oyatunji African Village, did interviews there for ended up writing my dissertation based on my work there, and that was on the Odu, which is the sacred text of the Ifa tradition. So again, it was the stories that appealed to me, and I came into an understanding that we live from story,
Hmm.
the stories that we tell ourselves, and the stories that our culture also tells us about who we
Society,
are.
yep, society and school and parents, all that.
Exactly. So, it was that and somewhere along in that trajectory, I became aware of Jean Houston, who was one of the early human potential movement leaders, and began to study her work about the possible human for the possible society, and began to develop an interest in the evolution of consciousness.
Mm.
So it was that evolution of consciousness. It was that path that kind of led me to this work about ancestral lineage healing. And then, so I did that certification with an organization called Ancestral Medicine. And then I studied with Malodoma Soulmate and his work with the Nagara tradition, the medicine wheel, and became certified as a diviner with the medicine wheel, and so I do that work now as well.
Wow. So, what were you learning about yourself as you were kind of going through this process? And were you raised like religiously? Because you were raised in the Deep South. So, how did this kind of mesh or not mesh with how you were raised? I would assume you were
Yeah,
raised like a Christian.
definitely. I went to church every week of my life.
Hmm.
As a child, grew up in the Methodist Church, which later became the United Methodist Church. But my parents didn't. They didn't. What should I say? Um, they didn't have a problem with my inquiring mind. So they encouraged me to explore and to ask questions. And so that was just kind of expected.
Okay.
So I didn't,
They understood you were a free thinker, basically encouraged it.
yeah, yeah, they did. They
Hmm.
understood me. And then, I was like the black sheep in the family. I was the child, the one of the 10 who, was on this trajectory.
You were definitely ahead of your time in terms of being awake and being into the spiritual aspects of life, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, began to study African and African American spiritual traditions and practices, and recognize the incredible and important significance that spiritual grounding has had for Black people in every aspect of our movement, of our social history.
Hmm.
So then studying the Orisha tradition, I studied hoodoo and voodoo, all of that. Like nothing was off limits for me. There was no fear. Because there was no fear, I was able to approach different traditions with an open, receptive, and inquiring mind. And I call all of these systems as spiritual technologies.
Which they are.
Yeah, and I
Humans
don't,
are technology, actually, when you think about it.
yeah, yeah. So it's no, um, I don't, I don't feel a need to be exclusionary, you know, uh,
Hmm.
no, yeah. So all of that is part of what has shaped me.
So when did you realize there was a need to kind of dig into this ancestral healing for Black people, or for African Americans, as we're called, or people of African descent? When did you realize that there's a lot of trauma, and there was a need for healing within those maybe subconscious traumas that were built into us inherently, because our lineage has trauma built in it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a gradual thing because my doctoral dissertation was on Ifa, the Orisha tradition, the Odu, and the title of my book that was published out of that research was Divining the Self, um, the study of Yoruba myth and human consciousness. So in my first introduction to the Ifa tradition, I was told about the ancestors and how to set up an ancestral altar and the importance of honoring the ancestors and recognizing the ancestors and calling their names and understanding that I come from a lineage that whatever they were doing, like I'm an extension of what they were doing, whether that's
Mhm.
positive or negative or both, and generally it is both.
Right.
So then it was a natural movement from my study of Ifa. When the Ancestral Medicine book came out by Daniel Four, I immediately did some research, made contact with him. He was living in Asheville, North Carolina. I was living in South, I was only about 2 hours away from him. Made an appointment, drove up to Asheville, got some friends together, met him. We met him for lunch. We took a pop-up lunch with us. And now it's so funny, but we sat down, we just like drilled him for 4 hours, like
Mhm.
explain this thing to me. So
Make it make sense.
yeah, make it make sense. And then there was a training coming up in Atlanta in Decatur. A couple of months after that, I signed up for that, came to Decatur and participated in this ancestral lineage healing weekend intensive experience, and it was very intense. So it was then that I actually had an opportunity to explore and to see what that meditation process included. And I was very skeptical. I said, "Oh, I would be probably the one person where nothing happens. I'll go, they'll just do all of this, and I'll just be sitting there." Well,
What
that was not
happened?
the case. That was not the case at all.
So you definitely felt something. You had an experience.
It was an amazing experience. It's very somatic. It was a lot of grief, release that I didn't know that I was carrying. You know, it's and everybody has their own experience with that whenever they do the ancestral meditation. But for me, it was very somatic, and so I got to the point where whenever I would do that, I would say to the ancestors, I'm like, "Don't let me feel it. Let me."
So let me ask you this. I have some experience with the QHHC, which is a Dolores Cannon's quantum healing or hypnosis technique. Is it kind of similar to that, where you kind of get taken into a meditative state and then have a connection within your higher spiritual self, and that's what kind of brings through the information?
Well, it's somewhat. I mean, you're opening a portal
Hmm.
in the spiritual realm. You're fully conscious, so you're not in any hypnotic state. You're fully
Okay.
conscious, but you in the sort of relaxation phase where we are being guided and saying, you're letting go of your rational mind, because that's where we live. Mostly, we live in our head in this culture.
Our egoic mind.
Yes, and
Hmm.
so the idea is to get from your head into your body, move the energy down, and accept that there is another whole reality that you can access. So that's the biggest challenge for some people is often folk will say, am I making this up? I must be making this up.
Yeah.
And so, I'm like, and so what if you are? I mean, you're sitting on the chair. Are you sitting on your body? Is in a physical space, right? But what else is possible? Can you go somewhere else with your energy?
Of
Can you
course.
go
I would
somewhere else?
say yes.
Yeah, of course you can. So when you open to that possibility, then that invisible world just rushes in. It's like, oh, here's we got a new playmate.
I've been waiting to come. I've been waiting to talk to you.
And I
Where have you been?
actually,
Where have you been all my life?
some clients describe it like that. They say, well, oh my gosh, they were just so happy. It just seemed like they were so happy and whatever. And, with tears are rolling down and the client is describing the experience. So it's fascinating. It's not, we do emphasize that the invisible spiritual realm is as real as the physical world. And in the physical world, you would always be careful where you are. You would know that not everybody is wishing you well.
Yeah.
And so in the spirit realm, we say, you establish a layer of protection around yourself, and you
Hmm.
ask for your guides to come. And if you feel uncomfortable at any point, you can always turn to the spirit guide. Somebody, you're a practitioner, I'm there. You can say, can I come out? I've had people to say, oh my, I have this headache, or I have this pain in my left side, or whatever. And I guide them back, guide them out. It's like, okay, let's take a break.
Hmm.
So that's kind of a bit about how that happens.
So what do people do? Like true Christians ever come to you and they like accuse you of being working with spirits, evil spirits and demonic spirits and entities? How do you balance like knowing that you have a very religious background? You came out of the Methodist church, but knowing that you're also doing this very spiritual work to this, maybe not Christian necessarily, but still very spiritual and very much a real experience. How do you balance that? Or
I,
does it ever come up even?
Mostly the people who come to me are open.
Okay.
I mean, like they're on a certain level of conscious evolution just to make that step. So if somebody is too fearful, they wouldn't even get that far.
Yeah.
Some
What
people
do
are
you
really.
what do you say to people though who are very much indoctrinated into the Judeo-Christian mindset? Do you even have a conversation with them about
I don't proselytize at all. I never try to convince anybody that they should do ancestral lineage work. For it's not for everybody.
Mhm.
There's an Ifa saying that, excuse me, let me get some water, that the gods cannot grant. I've got some sinus drainage going
Take your
on.
time. Yeah, take your time. You're fine.
The saying is that the gods cannot grant what the Ori has not sanctioned.
Mm.
The Ori is the mind, it's the head, it's the consciousness. So if you don't have a consciousness that allows you to receive, you can't.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what traditional in the Christian tradition would say. You're praying amiss, because I mean, a prayer is nothing more than in a spiritual technology to access another power and bring that power to bear, bring that energy to bear on the situation. So that is what is happening in ancestral lineage healing. You're asking for these these spirits, these disembodied relatives of yours who once lived in a physical body and now live in an invisible spiritual body. You're asking that they be brought together in a container of prayer,
What kind
a
of
high level, a higher energetic vibration for elevation. Yes.
Mhm. Why do people come to you specifically? Like, what kind of sense do they have? Like, what is their motivation in seeing you? Do they have a sense they need to connect with their ancestors, or is there some sort of pain or trauma they're experiencing?
Well, I'm finding that more and more Black people are interested in finding in exploring spiritual traditions beyond the Christian tradition that they grew up with. So people who consider themselves spiritual but not religious, and by that they mean they don't want to be bound by the dogma or the sort of the fear. They're trying to break away from that. Then they'll come, and they may come for divination in the Dagara system. The Dagara system uses a medicine wheel, and it is really about helping the individual to discover more about the self and release those gifts into the world. So sometimes people come because they are seeking their purpose, or they want some confirmation on their purpose and their reason for being in the world. And sometimes they just come out of curiosity. I just heard about this, and can you help me understand it?
Mhm.
Yeah,
How gratifying is it when you have an experience, one of your clients has an experience and they have a breakthrough? How does it make you feel when to know that you're helping them out in some kind of way?
it's wonderful. It's excellent. Yeah, it's excellent. In the Gara system, it's based on the five elements, and it's determined by the last digit of the year that you're born. So my element, I'm a 9, and my element is mineral. So mineral people generally your purpose is connected to helping folk remember who they are. Mineral people help you to remember they are connected in community. The community is important to them. Um, they want to just do things to make the community better. So that goes back from to my childhood. I loved rocks and minerals. I collected rocks and minerals. I love stories. Mineral people are storytellers. So every time I work with a client, then it's an opportunity for me to release my medicine. We use the term personal medicine. So personal medicine is your gift, that your signature gift. All of us have many gifts, but your signature gift is your personal medicine. So every time I work with a client or a group, I actually do more group work now than individual.
Mhm.
Um, it's very gratifying, it's fulfilling because I am using my medicine to help people.
So with the group situation, you take a whole group and you kind of take them into the meditative state and how is that different from when you're working on one-on-one with somebody?
Well, um, one on one, you can monitor the person better, right? And you can ask directed questions to that individual and guide them. With the group, you're just trying to sense kind of the group energy
Hmm.
in terms of the pace of the meditation. So sometimes you're gonna have people who are lagging behind. You're gonna have people who are kind of yeah, in the middle and kind of waiting. But when I do the group work and we come out, we always debrief, and people have an opportunity to ask questions. And we also have some homework, some follow-up practices to do. So whatever we started as a group, then your assignment then is over the course of the week. Usually it's a once a week group. You do an individual practice, and then you come back and you report on where you are.
I want to digress a little bit because when we first started this conversation, you said that your goal was to get arrested. I'm curious to know, did you ever get arrested?
No, I didn't. I never got arrested, and then I realized that you didn't have to get arrested. Like that, you could be a freedom fighter. There were other ways to be a freedom fighter. So
Mhm. You're definitely fighting for freedom in a different kind of way, definitely.
yes, yes. So
So what are you working on now? What's your main project now? Are you working on anything new? What's your main focus now?
Well, yes, actually just finished editing an anthology of ancestral stories from ancestral lineage healing practitioners. So that anthology is being released within just a few weeks. It's an open press publication, so it's free and it's a digital format. We have 12 contributors. It's called Ancestral Wisdom, Sacred Stories of Contact, Healing, and Care. That has been in the works for the past 2 years. So I'm
Mhm.
really excited that it's coming to fruition. So we'll be doing a launch party for that sometime within perhaps the next month.
Also, it's going to be released very soon then.
Yeah. It's just it's ready. We just got to get the logistics together. It'll be a virtual launch, so I'll send you the invitation. You
Right.
can you can share it with your group, your
I'll
followers.
leave it in the comments below.
Yeah. So there's that, and I'm also working on some meditation scripts. Some of the clients that I've worked with said, this is great when you are leading and guiding this ancestral meditation. I'm fine, I can do it, I make contact, but when I try to do it on my own by myself, it's problematic. So can you do some recordings? So that's what I'm working on now is as actually a set of recordings for ancestral meditations.
That's great. So do you feel like society in general is leaning more towards the spiritual aspects of nature, or are we still in this kind of religious kind of mindset? It seems like people are a little more open-minded now.
I think so. I think that there is a gradual evolution in spiritual consciousness and
You said it
awareness.
so eloquently. Yes, you said exactly. That's probably how I should have phrased the question.
I do think so. Just kind of based on the people. A lot of quote millennials come to me,
Mm.
folk that are like, oh, this doesn't work, and I don't know. Can you help me understand some other things? And so yeah, so I do see that. I do see that. See that happening, and I mean, the climate that we live in now. I do think that more people are going to turn to spiritual development as a coping mechanism. You know, folk
Mm.
ask me, well, what do I do? What can we do? My answer is two things. What can we do? One, you can go in, find your inner sanctuary with your God self, whatever form your God self takes. And the other thing I say to people is be in community. We get strength from being connected. In At ITC, we teach the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because you are. So a person is a person. A person is a human because of other people. And so then it is our interaction, our connectivity that gives us a certain kind of power that you don't get by yourself.
Mm.
So those are the kind of spiritual strategies that I suggest for people who are saying, "Oh, how do we cope with all this negative energy? You turn on the TV, and then there's this, and oh my gosh, and then there's war, and then there's all of this, and
Yes,
yeah,
government political turmoil. Yep.
the sky is falling." It's
But it's
like,
also mindset, because if you look at things in a negative way, then life's going to be more negative. If you look at things in a positive way, then you have a different outcome, I believe.
yeah. It's where you. What is the saying? I studied metaphysics. I didn't talk about that, but somewhere all along the way, I was studying metaphysics. The Course in Miracles and everything that I could find, Science of
Mhm.
Mind, Unity, like all of that, all of the resources that were available to me, and of course, the sort of unifying principle there is that wherever you place your energy, wherever you place your attention, that's where your energy flows. So if
Right.
you place your attention on the negativity, then you send an energy that way and it strengthens that, right? So that is, that's consistent again with the, spiritual principles in the African traditions.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, so we're almost out of time. I have some hot seat rapid fire questions that I kind of ask all my guests. The first one being, how do you define a spiritual awakening, or how would you explain what does a spiritual awakening mean to you?
A spiritual awakening, to me, it means an activation of an inner awareness and knowing. That's the short answer.
Right. Next question is, what's the most valuable lesson what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in life so far?
The most valuable lesson that I have learned in life so far is my own power, to recognize my own power.
And the final question is, what would be your advice to someone who's going through a spiritual awakening, or they're starting to question things, they're starting to look things a little differently? How would you advise them?
My advice generally is to look within, because we have a tendency to look without and travel. We go to Peru and Africa and Hawaii and, all these places looking for spirituality where actually the power is within. So that's my advice is there are worlds unexplored, within the human consciousness.
Mhm. Great answers. All right, so if someone wants to get more information on your practice, where would they go, Dr. Velma?
My website, so it's drvelmalove.com. So it's drvelmalove.com. And there's information there, and, work with me, and, contact, and all of that information is there.
Dr. Velma Love, I want to thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. You're doing great work, inspiring and helping others heal. You can't say anything more about that, but thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.